Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Movie Pet Podcast. I am your host, Christian Renteria, and this is the September Movie Roundup. I almost forgot the name of my own thing. Hello, everybody. You have no one to blame but yourselves for thinking that I would probably keep up with my release schedule. I told you multiple times I am a bad podcast host, and this is one of those times. I have no excuse. I am sorry. I said I'm a bad podcast host. I'm a bad podcast host, and apparently can't talk now. Yeah, I don't know what happened, guys. September just came and went for me, to be completely honest. So I apologize. I will do better. Obviously, we're in October. It's spooky season. I got some stuff lined up. So we'll be doing that all of October. But here I'm doing the September movie roundup. There are a few movies that I didn't get to watch yet in September. The big one being The Substance, which everyone, is really going crazy about. There was another one that I obviously can't remember what it is, but we'll be probably be talking about some of those later in the year. But let's get to the September movie roundup. It was a pretty good month, I would say. Pretty decent month for movies. So let's just talk right about them. The first one I'm going to talk about is Beetlejuice. And fair warning, I did not like it. I wasn't a fan. I was not a fan. I remember watching the first one a lot as a kid, especially, around, obviously, spooky season, around Halloween, because it was pretty much always on. And I had pretty much given up hope, probably like some other people, that there would ever be a sequel, despite, a lot of talk of there being a sequel. And then the sequel picked up. Tim Burton was like, yep, I'm doing it. Winona Ryder's back. Michael Keaton's back. Catherine O'Hara's back. We got Jenna Ortega in the cast. She was blowing up because of Scream and Wednesday, and obviously she had worked with Burton on that. And I was kind of just, I don't know, I guess I was kind of, I wouldn't say over it, but I just didn't expect it to finally happen. And then when it did happen, it just kind of was like, oh, okay, it happened. Great. So sequel came out and the trailers came out, and I was very lukewarm on it. I like I said, I liked the original as a kid, and when I was younger, and watching it as an adult, it's still pretty good. I think there's probably some nostalgia glasses on there for me a little bit, but when trailers came out and everything, I don't know, it just wasn't grabbing me as much as I thought it would. And finally saw a sequel. I was out of town the last week of September. I was in LA, and I got to see this at the Chinese theater before they took it down and replaced it with something else. And I will give it points for that, because I saw it at the Chinese. Any movie I see at the Chinese, I always give extra points, because it's a great theater, and I love going there, and I love going to LA. But I wasn't a fan of it. There were things that I did like about it. I liked the practical effects of it all. That was something that Tim Burton, fought very hard for. He didn't want the movie to be, a CGI fest, especially considering that he did a lot of the stuff practically in the first movie. So he wanted to bring that back. And I think the casting, like I mentioned, Jenna Ortega is pretty perfect to play Winona Ryder's daughter in the movie, Astrid. Her name is Astrid in the movie. And Willem Dafoe playing, I forgot the character name, I forgot to write it down, but he's playing an actor who played, who majority of his career, he was playing a cop. So he kind of carries that with him he's part of the after world, the afterlife story. And he's clearly having a lot of fun doing that. So credit to him for going fully committed into that role, because that is a role that is, you can tell whoever was going to be in that was going to have a lot of fun with that, and he clearly was having a lot of fun with it. So there were some things that I did, kind of like and enjoy about the movie, but I think overall there was a lot going on, and there's probably too much going on. I don't think we got enough Monica Bellucci as a character. She's kind of like the quote-unquote villain of the movie, if you will, but I think they could have used her a little bit more. Some stuff gets tied up and very quickly without kind of any real real solution. I mean, not real solution, but kind of just to tie it up too quickly to really kind of, I don't know, justify it kind of ending that quickly. So I don't know. I just wasn't a fan. I wasn't. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people are praising this movie and really love this movie. There's a lot of things I liked about this movie, but I think at the end of the day, I just wasn't a complete fan of it. I'm sorry. Next movie we're going to talk about in September is Azrael. Now, this is a movie that will be coming out on Shudder later this month in October. I forget the exact day. I think it's it's either mid or late October that it's coming out. But it got a theater release first. And this is another movie I happened to see when I was out in LA as well. And it stars Samara Weaving. She's in here. She's playing the title character, Azrael. And in the movie, there is not a single line of dialogue. This movie is set years after the rapture. So you got a little bit of, religious, kind of somewhat folky. It kind of has that feeling in the movie. It's more folky than religious tinge to it. But she's a woman named Azrael. We don't know her name other than it's in the credits and it's, the movie title. But she is used as kind of sort of this sacrifice for this cult that we, don't really know why they're doing it because, again, there's no dialogue. She manages to escape, and then what follows is her trying to survive what comes after. And Azrael goes to a place I didn't expect it to go, especially in the ending. The ending kind of gets a little buck wild, and I'm all for it because Samara Weaving, covered in blood, jacking people up, I think that is everybody's cup of tea, and you get that here in this movie in full, especially in the final act. But this was a movie that I kind of really went in blind. I knew the movie was coming out. I knew it had Samara Weaving, and I knew it was kind of a horror movie, and that was it. That's all I really knew about the movie. This is one of those rare instances where I knew nothing about the movie, really. I had kind of started watching the trailer and then I stopped because my feed, I was watching on Twitter and my feed kind of refreshed, so I didn't get to finish watching it. But yeah, this is one of those movies that I went in completely blind, and I'm kind of happy and also conflicted about that because I know a lot of people like to go in blind. They don't want stuff ruined for them, and trailers tend to give a lot away. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. And I rarely go into a movie blind, but I was okay with that. So when I ended up watching the movie, I had Samara Weaving. She's really the only kind of name you recognize in the movie, and probably the only face, at least for me anyway. But the other name that I knew when his name popped up was Simon Barrett. Simon Barrett is a writer. He wrote The Guest. He co-wrote You're Next. So he worked a lot with Adam Wingard, and I'm a huge fan of those two when they're together. I think they're doing another movie together, which I'm very excited to see. But I didn't know Simon Barrett was attached to this. I didn't know he wrote it. So all that said, I did enjoy the movie. It also moves pretty quick. It's not even a full hour and a half. It's like an hour and 28 minutes with the credits. So it's a movie that keeps moving. It doesn't really slow down. And even when you feel like it's slowing down, it's serving a purpose. You're fully engaged with everything that's going on, probably because you're trying to figure out what is going on and what is happening, because again, there's no line of dialogue. It's a lot of grunts. You don't really know why certain things are happening, but they're happening, and you're like, oh, I kind of like this. This is pretty cool. So I shouldn't say there isn't no dialogue. There is dialogue, but it makes sense why the dialogue is there. And it also doesn't make sense because you're like, okay, why is this happening? Why is it happening this way? So it's, for the most part, there's no dialogue. It is a very dialogue-less movie. So I think the one thing that will, get people going will be the fact that there's barely any dialogue. And then the ending. The ending, it goes to a place, and there's certain things where at that point I'm like, I need dialogue. I need to know what's going on. I need to know why this is happening, why this happened, this, that, and the other. So that's just me. But yeah, I think if you're interested, if you want to watch something cool, if you want to watch something a little against the the type of other stuff that we are accustomed to seeing, Azrael is that movie. Again, it's coming out on Shudder sometime this month. I think it's like mid-October. probably, later in the month. But give it a shot. It's Samara Weaving. Again, she's covered in blood at one point and she's messing people up. I think we all agree that that is something that we like to see. The next movie I want to talk about is actually the first movie I actually saw in September. The new first movie I saw in September, which was the Netflix movie Rebel Ridge. Jeremy Saulnier, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, and I apologize. He has a new movie down on Netflix, like I mentioned, and it's probably going to be one of the surprise hits of the year for a lot of people. And if not for that, at least for Netflix, because this is a Netflix movie that I think is one of the better ones that have, a lot of people say have come out. I tend to agree with that, so there is that. And Saulnier, by the way, he's known for, again, I don't think I'm pronouncing his last name right. I think most people will probably know him from the director of Green Room, which is what he directed. He directed Blue Ruin before that, and then he directed Netflix's Hold the Dark, so he has worked with Netflix in the past, and then he did 2 episodes for the last season of HBO's True Detective, which I have not watched yet. So he directs this kind of pseudo revenge, kind of westerny movie, and this movie has gone through a lot of ups and downs before it finally came out. So there's a lot going on in this movie, but behind the scenes, kind of what it is, it's very much, man comes into town and notices kind of corruption going on in the town, and he's got to fix it, kind of thing. So this movie was originally going to star John Boyega. Yes, from Attack the Block, Star Wars, all that good stuff. But at a certain point early in production, he backed out citing family issues. Although some reports say there were other reasons at play why he backed out. You can look those up. That's I'm not going to get into that. So they found another actor, and they started shooting with him a little bit, and then he dropped out as well. And then finally, they found their lead in Aaron Pierre, which after watching this movie, I think this kind of seemed the consensus for everybody, was probably the better option, was probably the better choice. Now, Pierre, this is the first time I've seen him in anything. I was trying to, kind of look up and be like, is this the first thing he's really been in? No, Pierre is known. He was in the sci-fi series Krypton. He was in the TV miniseries The Underground Railroad, which I think was the thing that Saulnier saw him in and won him the role. But he also, and I realized this afterwards, I'm like, oh, so I have seen him in something. He played a mid-sized sedan in M. Night Shyamalan's Old. And he looks so different in this movie and in that movie. So I'm like, I couldn't believe that was the same person, but it was. So here he plays a character named Terry, who is on his way to a small town with a backpack filled with bail money for his cousin who he wants to get out of jail, who has to get out of jail. So you got, that little, plot run there. He is run off the road by the town's police, who then take the money. Terry eventually figures out that some of the townspeople, including the police and its sheriff, played by Don Johnson, aren't as clean as they should be, and Terry must deal with them in his own way with this specialized training that he has, that is very, very cool to see in the movie. I really dug this movie. Pierre is so good in this movie. He is so good. It's almost insulting how good he is in this movie. He has so many layers to Terry, and how they are all revealed throughout the movie and why he chooses to switch it up. It's so good. It really is so good. He is so good. And I'll be honest, like I mentioned, this is my first exposure to Pierre that I really knew about. Again, I forgot he played mid-sized sedan, but this is my first kind of exposure to him. And I want to see him in everything now. I truly want to see him in everything now. Pierre, on Twitter, once this movie came out and everybody started seeing him, at least the nerdy side of Twitter was like, oh, he's Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. That's totally him. And after watching this movie, because I didn't watch this movie a little bit later when it came out, so I was kind of seeing like a lot of the hype online and stuff. So I was seeing that also, that post about him playing Jon Stewart, aka Green Lantern, a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I see it now. I see he could totally play Jon Stewart. Absolutely, 100%. And I'm not the biggest, fan casting kind of guy. I'm like, yeah, wherever they get, I'm sure it will be good. But, and it's always a fun game to play. Don't get me wrong. But I never want to put expectations out there of who should be cast. But damn, Pierre would probably kill as Green Lantern. He really would. Anyway, Rebel Ridge. The whole idea of what happens between Terry, the cops, and the money. Terry has and gets it taken away. How he has the money and then it gets taken away from him. And then the certain term they use, which I didn't write down, I totally forgot, but it is a term that is real. It's a real thing where cops can take something from you and say that it's, again, I forget the term they use, but say that it's a certain thing, and it allows them to basically keep it, and you can fight it in court, but it will cost you more to fight it in court than getting back your, whatever property it is. It's kind of frustrating that I didn't write it down, but the concept itself is also very frustrating if you've ever been in it. So it's a real thing that Solner looked up, and it's a interesting concept that they used in the movie because it's only kind of used in the first half, and then the second half becomes kind of this, more, like I mentioned, revenge, pseudo-revenge, kind of Western man comes into town, tries to fix everything in the town kind of situation. So it becomes those two things, and it's like you kind of forget the first kind of half once the second half kind of picks up, because there's a lot. This movie kind of goes on for a little bit. If anything, it kind of goes on for a little bit. But the build-up for the movie is kind of the big thing for me, because this movie builds up to its finale, which is kind of heavily used in the marketing, and it's Terry taking down the police force. And he's taking them down without firing a single shot. And I know you're like, what are you talking about? That sounds kind of boring. He doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't kill anybody, but it's my podcast, but I can swear about it if I want to. He fucks some people up in this movie to the point where you're like, you might as well just kill him. You might as well just kill that person, because they're going to be in tremendous pain for the rest of their life. He jacks some people up in this movie. He really does. And there's a reason why he doesn't shoot anybody or wants to, commit to violence right away. He has a great scene with Don Johnson, like right before the switch up, like right when he switches up, where it's like, I tried this peacefully, and you're making me really question my motives, and now you're making me become violent. So I love that scene. I think that scene between them is very, very cool. And it happens early. It happens like midway through the movie, and it's really great. I want to mention some of the, obviously, supporting cast. Don Johnson plays the villain. Very good playing this kind of villain. It's kind of interesting. The first thing he pops in, he's like, oh yeah, like I totally understand your situation, but get out. It's like, get out. He's like, no, yeah, I totally understand. You're entitled to your frustrations, but get out. And once that happens, he's never playing, the good guy. He's never playing the thing. But I think the thing that the movie does well with the villains is that it puts the villain's perspective in the movie, and you kind of understand maybe why they're doing it. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make them, good, but they have this distorted vision of them being the good guys in this situation, even though they're doing it, illegally and doing it not by the book. So you kind of see where they're coming from. It doesn't make you root for them. And, if anything, it makes you root even more for Aaron Pierre and his character of Terry. So there's that. Anna Sophia Robb is in the movie as well. She plays a clerk that helps Terry, and she's kind of like the only good person that Terry runs in the town, or one of them anyway. And she has her own kind of plot story, and it actually makes sense why she's kind of helping her on there. So like I mentioned, the only real misstep that I have for the movie is that it kind of drags a little bit before the final act. I guess I kind of needed it, but it would have been okay if they had left it out. But that's just me. So I highly recommend Rebel Ridge if you have not watched it yet. 100%. It is definitely one of the surprises of the year. Even with its misstep of it being a little too long, it is probably one of the best movies of the year as well. And I don't throw that out willingly and very commonly. So if I'm saying that, and if you've listening to the podcast enough, I think that's kind of a serious thing for me to say. So Rebel Ridge on Netflix. If you can check it out, check it out. All right, the next movie we're going to talk about is The Killer's Game. Stunt fight choreographer, coordinator, actor even, J.J. Perry, who has done a multitude of things: Mortal Kombat, Blade, The One, Avatar 1 and 2, just, again, to name a few. He has done a lot of stuff. He has been working for a long time. Is back behind the camera. This is his second feature. The first one was Netflix's Day Shift, which is a pretty enjoyable time. And The Killer's Game, enjoyable for what it was. I'm not going to call it a masterpiece. I think out of the two, I think I had fun with this. I had fun with both, with Day Shift and The Killer's Game. I think this one was a little bit more fun. It was kind of drawing more on those like early 2000s movies, action movies anyway. Almost kind of felt like a glorified direct to video action movies, which some of you may think is a bad thing. Not for me. There is a lot of great, fun direct to video action movies, which J.J. Perry has been a part of in some way, shape, or form. But anyway, let's just move on from that, because I want to give a personal story that I have about J.J. Perry, because I have met J.J. Perry years ago. There was a film festival called Action Fest, which I think that version of Action Fest is no longer around. I think the name Action Fest is still around. I think someone else took it and is doing something else with it. But the alliteration that I went to in Action Fest, which was in actually in over in Asheville, North Carolina, and anybody who knows anybody in that area, my thoughts are with you guys, because that is all the pictures and videos that have been coming out of that because of the hurricane. It's just devastating over there. I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody. We were thinking about you and hope that you guys get whatever help you may need, or whatever help they may need as well. But back to this, that was not, there's no easy way to pivot from those two things. But going back to when I met Perry, I met him at this film festival, and there was like a choreographer kind of panel they were doing, and I met him afterwards. So it was myself, it was my brother, and Perry, and another fight choreographer, stunt coordinator there in Lerner Stovell, who, if you are, a fan of the direct-to-TV or direct-to-video action movies, you probably know his name as well. But it was us four kind of talking, and we were kind of like in the corner of the theater, because it was the whole auditorium, and we were kind of in like a little corner of it. And Perry was talking about, someone had asked him, I don't know if it was Storville or it was my brother, but someone had asked him a question about how he kind of choreographs certain scenes. And he was talking about a scene that he was doing for a movie that was coming up. And initially he kind of talked about it in a boxing way. And I was kind of and I looked back at the timetable of when that festival was and when he was there, and when and what movie came out around that time that he was involved in. And the only movie that I can find that he was involved in was Warrior, the Joe Edgerton, Tom Hardy MMA movie, which he was involved in. And he was doing the choreography for that. So I think he was probably talking about that. But the reason why I bring the story up is because I will always have this memory of Perry talking about where to put the camera in those scenes. And he was talking about putting the camera kind of like where the chest is, right? So you can see the person punching, you see the person that's punching at you, and you can feel and see those, those body blows, that POV of it. And he was doing an example of it, and he told me, he's like, hey, stand right here. And I'm like, okay. And he doesn't actually punch me, but he's starting to pretend to use me as a body bag. So all I see is J.J. Perry, this very capable man of breaking anybody that messes with him, using me as a punching bag, which I know he wasn't going to punch me, but that is a scary, scary man. And I mean, he was a very nice man. He was a very nice guy, but just knowing his skill level and what he is capable of, that's a very dangerous man. So that has always stuck with me. That has always been my personal kind of J.J. Perry story. It's a story that obviously, I don't know how many people I'm sure he's used tons of people as pretend body bags, but it's probably always been stunt people maybe. So that was kind of cool. Ironically enough, at this same film festival, I don't think it was the same year. I think it was a different year. I think it was either the year before or the year after. I also met Marco Zaror, who was in this movie. He plays Botas, and he plays one of the assassins. Also very cool very down to earth, took time to talk to everybody and meet everybody, take pictures. Very cool guy. And I have been a huge fan of his since even before that, but I have been a huge fan of his since then as well. So every time he pops up, it's always kind of playing the henchman. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but it's always very cool to see him in, kind of more big studio movies. So anyway, The Killer's Game follows Joe Flood, played by Dave Bautista, a veteran assassin who, right as he's ready to retire from the assassination game, meets a woman in Maisie, played by Sofia Boutella. He's diagnosed with a life-threatening illness and puts a hit on himself because he doesn't want to see Maisie, or he doesn't want Maisie to see him like that. However, Joe's not dying, as there was a mistake in the paperwork, and unfortunately for Joe, it's too late to end the contract, and he has some of the best assassins out in the world to take him out. Like I said at the very beginning, I had a very enjoyable time with this. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think helps very much so. It's not like this quirky, out there kind of action comedy kind of thing. It does have comedic bits to it. Obviously, it's a very fun kind of ride. It's very accessible to a lot of people. But it's, there's a little drama in there, a little romance in there, obviously with the, Joe and Maisie story. But it's not taking itself too seriously or very seriously, which helps this movie out a lot. I think action fans will get a kick out of it, especially with the addition of, direct-to-video stars like Zorro, which I just mentioned. Scott Adkins is also in this movie as well. He plays one of the hitmen. Wrestling fans, Drew McIntyre's in the movie. He plays Adkins' brother in here. Terry Crews plays a hitman that has known Joe Flood for years. I kind of wish they did a little bit more with him, especially considering the role he plays in the movie by the end. Daniel Bernhardt is also in here. He plays the right-hand man to Palm Clementov's villain. Bernhardt is one of those guys you will know immediately when you see him. He is always the bad guy. He is always the bad guy. He is always the right-hand man. He's always like the top henchman. He was one of the, hitmen, or one of the right-hand mans in the first John Wick movie. He was one of the agents in Matrix Reloaded, the kind of the new agents that came in. He played the lead one. He's been in a bunch of stuff. You will know. He played one of the last assassins that fought Charlize Theron in that one take in Atomic Blonde in the end. That was him. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's always one of those guys, like, he pops up, you're like, oh, okay. It's going to be a good fight scene because he's in that scene. He's probably helping out along the way as well. Ben Kingsley is also in the movie. He plays Joe's handler. Honestly, it was nice seeing Kingsley back on the big screen, even though it was a very small role. It's a very good role as well. He plays very much the mentor role in the movie. This movie won't be for everybody. Even I can see the problems with it. Immediately, they're using CGI blood for like the spurts and stuff. That was very, apparent, and it's very hit or miss for me. And I think once you notice it, it's like, oh, you noticed it for the rest of the movie, and it probably bothers you. It does kind of bother me sometimes, but at some point I was like, okay, it's fine, whatever. Some of the comedy stuff doesn't work. There is one particular character that gets very annoying the more he goes along, but that's whatever. That's it's part of the balancing act. Something's always gonna overtip, especially in an action comedy. I enjoyed The Killer's Game. It has its problems. It won't be for everybody. It's not going to be something that's going to be talked about at the end of the year, but if you're looking just for like a fun action movie, The Killer's Game is a good way to go. Next movie we'll talk about, Speak No Evil. It is finally out. It has finally come out. Everyone was like, I just want this to finally come out because we've been seeing the trailer every time we go to the movies. I want to see that same energy for a lot of the other trailers that are coming out. Smile 2. Can't go to the movies without seeing a trailer for that either, but no one's really talking about that one. But anyway, Speak No Evil, it's finally out. It's a remake of a Danish film from 2 years ago. It follows the same concept. Here, of course, it changes it to an American family, the American family played by Scoot McNairy. Mackenzie Davis, and the young girl is played by Alex Westleffer. I think that's pronounced her last name. They know a British couple, or get to know a British couple, in James McAvoy, Aisling. I'm going to mispronounce her last name, and I apologize. Franciosi. I apologize for that. And Dan Hugh in his first movie, by the way. They are invited by the British family to come stay in the remote farmhouse, and they soon realize, of course, that their hosts have a dark side to them. So See No Evil, for me, or Speak No Evil, sorry, Speak No Evil. See No Evil is a completely different movie. Speak No Evil is a prime, because I don't want to say perfect example, because I think there have been other examples of this, but at least with modern day remakes, it is a good example, a prime example of a remake taking the core and important elements of the original and expanding on them, or putting even a modern twist on it to keep the core of what the original was, and more importantly, doing its own thing at the same time. And it actually works. Because you can do your own thing and it doesn't work all the time. But Speak No Evil does that to, again, I don't want to say perfection, but does it to a point where it's very, very good. And it's very much its own movie. It doesn't ruin what the original did. Because the Danish film, if you haven't seen it, was very unsettling. And had a completely different ending and a result. Which, to be honest, in a mainstream movie like this, I don't know if audiences would have been okay with that. Especially if they didn't know that this was a remake, or, if they hadn't seen the original. Maybe if they had seen the original, maybe they were hoping that maybe this one would have a different ending, because that ending in the original movie, it's not great, and not because in a quality way. It is not great it's unfortunate, and an ending that is more proper and more common in foreign movies than American movies. Put it that way. And I don't want to keep mentioning that, the original and the remake. I'm going to be talking just about this one. I'm going to be talking just about this remake right here. So James McAvoy, obviously too good. He is too good at playing crazed individuals. And he comes off a little brash and loud and eccentric. And you can see why people would probably be driven to him. And then he does and says some of the things that make you kind of, tilt, would make anybody kind of tilt their head and be like, did he really just say that out loud? Did he say the soft part out loud? So yeah, and it's a slow madness that McAvoy kind of leaks out. And it works so well. He's so good at that. So McAvoy gets all the credit in the world. And because the movie lingers and stays in uncomfortable situations, it makes us, the audience, and even the people in the scene, feel like we're in that situation and we can't escape. And other movies would probably just trim that down, or, kind of make the scene shorter. Not here. They want to make you uncomfortable. They want to make you like you want to escape in a complete different sense. Until you want to escape because, these people are trying to, potentially hurt you. And we know, obviously, from the trailers and even from the movie, you can tell that, McAvoy is a bad guy. But when he finally snaps and shows his true self, that is like, oh, yeah, I saw that coming, but like, this is not just, unpleasant. This is truly terrifying. This man is scary. You do not want to meet this man in a darkened alley in any sort of way. And I know the movie, that being said, that the movie's being kind of tagged as a horror movie. And I guess, in some ways, yes, it is a horror movie. I don't know if I would just like, when you think of horror movie, you think of like jump scares and like crazed villains, which McAvoy is. But you think of jump scares and you think of all this other, probably all this other stuff. Unless it's, elevated horror movie, and then you have different connotations for that. But I would probably label this more suspense thriller. So if you were taken away by the tag that, this is just a horror movie, it's not really a horror. I mean, yeah, it is a horror movie. In every aspect of the word, it is a horror movie. But it's not the horror movie that, like, if you can't handle jump scares, don't worry about that. This movie doesn't really have jump scares. It is very much more a suspense thriller of anything. It has, obviously the trope of, characters making slightly dumb decisions at very important times. This is one of those movies as well. But it's one of those, it makes sense to the characters of why these characters are doing that. This movie does a very good job of being like, why don't they just leave? And it's like, we can't leave now because of, what happened and what is said and stuff like that. So, yeah. And like I mentioned, McAvoy is getting a lot of love, and I know I've been talking about McAvoy, but I want to talk about some other people here as well. Ainsley, again, the person whose last name I can't pronounce, I apologize. She plays Claire. She is McAvoy's wife. She is also very good here at playing someone who you want to trust, and she really brings in, she really brings that out in the stories that she tells, especially later on in the movie when we know kind of what's going on. She is definitely one of those characters where you're like, where does she really fall? Like, where does she fall on the spectrum of the events that are happening. Can we trust her? Can we not trust her? She does a very good job at that. I mentioned Danny Hugh, who plays the son in the movie. This is his first acting job, which is crazy, but he does a tremendous job of conveying his emotions, especially in one key scene. All that while not being able to talk. His character, is not able to talk throughout the movie. And Davis and McNary, obviously, they are good as always. They are always very good at everything they do, and they do a great job here as well. Their characters are going through a rough patch in their marriage in the movie, and in their lives in general. So having to come together when everything starts to get revealed is pretty important. And like I mentioned, like this movie does a very good job of having characters do things that you're like, don't do that, and then they do it, and you're like, well, I guess I could kind of see why they would do that, because it's who these characters are. So Speak No Evil, there's a lot going on. Speak No Evil, it looks at masculinity. I didn't say that right, but I'm going to move on, and not necessarily toxic masculinity. I can't say the word. But you know what I'm talking about. But it's not necessarily toxic, the toxic side of it. It is very much more of the advantages and disadvantages of it. And what would happen in certain situations. If you were in that situation, what would happen? I mean, there's other themes there, but that's kind of been the main one that everyone has kind of been, pinpointing on. So I really enjoyed Speak No Evil. It is different enough, and maybe very different from the original enough, that it won't be one of those movies where like, oh, well, it didn't do this from the original. It is a good movie on its own. And if you didn't know it was a remake, and you want to go look at the remake, the original up rather, I would just tell you, I would just prepare you for that movie. It's not. It's just be warned. Just be warned about the original. But this remake, this is what I like about remakes. This is why I'm not anti-remake, because every now and then a remake will come along. Very rarely, but a remake will come along where it does something different enough where I can be like, yeah, that wasn't great, but I can appreciate it doing its own thing. But Speak No Evil is one of those movies where it's like, it's a remake, it does its own thing, but it works. And that is more important for me. Take the concept, take the core elements, maybe even some scenes, expand or mold to the new version of a story you're telling, and more importantly, make it your own. And that is what Speak No Evil does. And it's a highly recommend for me. It's very, very good. Okay, moving on. All right, moving on to the last movie that I'm going to talk about. Again, there was quite a few movies I missed in September, so I apologize for that. But this is the last one we're going to talk about. It's Transformers 1. The Transformers back in theaters, this time in a fully animated movie. And Transformers 1 is acting as a prequel, showing us the friendship between Optimus Prime and Megatron, or here as they're known, Orion Pax and D16. They're voiced to Chris Hemsworth and Brian Tyree Henry, who are minor bots before they go off try to find the future of Cybertron and discovering something that will change their fates forever. I will always admit this on the podcast. I think I have a very good track record of admitting when I'm wrong. I was very skeptical. Spectacle. No, I was right the first time. Skeptical of Transformers 1. I don't know what's going on with me today. Based off that first trailer. I was weary of it based on that first trailer. It was a tone I wasn't expecting, so I admit to having kind of that knee-jerk reaction, which I try not to have with trailers or even movies. I didn't say this movie was going to suck or anything like that. I would never try to do that, and I never try to do that. But I was on the fence on how I would probably feel about the movie. But I like Transformers. Like the series, like the old cartoons. I liked Bumblebee. Rise of the Beasts was enjoyable for what it was. It wasn't great, but it was enjoyable at least. So I was probably going to end up liking at least something here. And after watching it, I again admit that I was wrong, because I fully enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I really, really liked Transformers 1. I liked it more than I thought I would. You really care about the friendship between Orion Pax and D16. And when it goes to the relationship that we know they have in the future as Megatron and Optimus Prime, you feel it. You feel like it's one of those, I don't want to ruin too much of the story, because I think seeing that relationship evolve from the beginning to the end is really, really great. And it kind of, you kind of see how it makes sense. It also kind of takes it takes it to the extreme a little bit, where it's like, oh, I kind of make sense, but like, I if I was in that situation, I wouldn't go that far. But again, they try to make it make sense in the story, and it does for a lot of it. But you feel that relationship, and I know everyone loves Chris Hemsworth, but Brian Tyree Henry as D16, aka Megatron, he is the standout of the voice cast. When you watch this movie, especially in that final act, you will know why he is the standout of that voice cast. He does such a tremendous job in this movie, and he as he does in every movie he's in, but he does such a tremendous job here, conveying all those emotions of D16 to when he eventually becomes Megatron. I might as well talk about the other voice cast. Scarlett Johansson is in here. She plays the other big robot in here, Alita 1. Another minor bot that kind of is more up on the hierarchy than Orion Pax and D16. She kind of gets sucked into the adventure, as does B127, aka Bumblebee, although you never name him Bumblebee. He's always B127, although there is a running gag on what to call him. They do call him B, but it's a running gag throughout the movie that Keegan-Michael Key does very, very well in this movie. And he plays the chatterbox of the group and helps out, of course, with them along the way. John Hamm is also a voice in the movie, Sentinel Prime, the leader of the city where the story takes place. And I will be honest, I did not know it was John Hamm for a long time. Like, I remember, like, by the end, I was like, where's John Hamm in this? And then I heard it in Sentinel Prime. Very late in the movie is when I heard. I was like, oh, that's John Hamm. Okay, there you go. Lawrence Fishburne is in here. He plays Alpha Trion. He does a bit of narration at the beginning of the movie, but he is a character in the movie itself, and it's Lawrence Fishburne, so obviously his voice is very iconic at this point, and he plays a vital role in the movie about halfway through, where everything kind of actually starts to shift over. Steve Buscemi is in this. He does a voice that is so prominent when it pops up on screen. Everyone in my theater was laughing, and I won't ruin who he plays, but it's kind of perfect casting for who he ends up playing. If you haven't looked that up, so there's that. And my theater loved this movie, by the way. My theater was into it. They were laughing, they were cheering. There was one person like in my row, but like on the other end, that was like really, really into it. Kudos to them. Appreciate them. I was into it too. I wasn't into it as much as they were, but this movie is very good. Is it perfect? No, it's not. There is a story bit that you can probably see coming. It doesn't necessarily take away the fun of everything, but it's a bit that you can probably see coming. It is one of the better, obviously, Transformers movies we've had in theaters. It's just fun, man. It is a completely fun movie. This movie can be for everybody. It's for, the grown, adults like myself who are a fan of Transformers, and people maybe even older than I am, who, enjoy the Gen 1 stuff. I'm a little bit, more into the, not current gen, but, kind of like the middle gen of Transformers. It's for the little kids because you got a lot of good stuff in there. It's just a lot of fun. Plus the inside jokes of this movie, and not just with like Transformers inside jokes. I'm talking about like, obviously Keegan-Michael Key is voicing B. We'll just call him B in the movie. His introduction scene, like his whole like introduction scene from beginning to end, there is some inside jokes. There's one particular inside joke that I very much loved because it is from one of my favorite bits that that he does. So I had fun with that, and I'm pretty sure that me and my brother, or me and my family, were the only ones laughing at that because I think we were the only ones that got it. But the jokes in here are very good, especially the inside jokes that they have. So it would be a highly recommend for me, maybe borderline stamp of approval for me. Honestly, this was just a hell of a lot of fun. I am gonna go watch this again. Very rare that I go watch a movie twice nowadays, but I think I'm gonna go watch this again. So there you go. Transformers 1, very, very good. Go watch it. I don't want to spoil too much of it because I want you guys to enjoy it as much as possible as well. And that's it, everybody. That is my September movie roundup. Again, there's some movies that I missed, and I apologize for that. Although a couple of them will probably end up talking about in the October movie roundup because they are horror movies. So, hint, hint. Obviously, we're in October. It's spooky season. We're gonna switch over to do some horror stuff soon. I got some things planned. not a lot of things. This October kind of snuck up on me, because I just mentioned at the beginning, September kind of just, came and went. So spooky season might be a little, maybe spooky week. That's not spooky month, maybe spooky weeks. But that is the September Movie Roundup. Let me know what your favorite movie of September was. Did you agree with anything I said? Did you disagree with anything I said? I'm always open for conversation on the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, all that good stuff linked down below in the description/show notes area. No matter where you're listening to the podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it, go give us a rating, go give us a follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, because that helps out the podcast in the long run as well, as you all know, probably. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. I very much appreciate it, as I always do. And as always, be good people and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movies!